But first, with the world's attention focused on Britain as the nation mourns the life and death now of the Duke of Edinburgh and starts to contemplate the end of an era, there's another issue in the United States equally deserving of attention, but which most of the world's media would rather not report. And that's the chaos of illegal rivals right along America's southern border with Mexico. Now, since the change of president in January, well over 300,000 people, yes, 300,000 people since January, have crossed illegally from Mexico into the United States. Now, they come from a large number of Central and South American countries in numbers that are putting huge pressure on authorities and resources. But President Biden, well, he wants to have his citizens believe this is nothing much other than business as usual, the typical seasonal flows, they call it, of people smugglers.
The truth of the matter is, nothing has changed. There is a significant increase in the number of people coming to the border in the winter months of January, February, March. It happens every year.
Now, having been there in opposition during the Rudd-Gillard years when 50,000 people arrived legally into Australia and the Labor Party basically throwing their hands up in the air and saying that nothing could be done to stop people smugglers, right through to working for a Prime Minister who had a clear plan to stop the boats and did, the illegal migration of people around the globe is a massive issue that we've got to talk about and understand better. In their quest for open borders and global government, the left thrives on the generosity of good people and the reality that most people don't know all the facts about refugees, illegal migration, and a nation's right to secure its borders. Around the world, there are tens of millions of people given half a chance who'd love to swap life in their own country for a new life in another country that's more safe, more free, and more prosperous. And they're quite prepared, if they have to push their way in, if that's what it takes, especially when the signals coming from that country's government might change. As you know, I was not always a great fan of the former US President Donald Trump, but his determination to build a wall with Mexico and stop the waves of illegal migration at least meant that the flood had slowed under his term to a comparative trickle. But because Trump was all bad, according to the new president, of course, and his Democratic colleagues, just about all his works had to be scrapped, even the ones that had succeeded, such as his efforts to hinder illegal migration. And the result, of course, well, absolutely predictable. This trade in human suffering, particularly in relation to young children, well, all just started up again not long after the inauguration of Joe Biden. Last month, the month of March, there was a record, 172,000, with the rate of illegal crossings having more than doubled since the election, and it's now tracking fully towards 2 million illegal crossings for this year, or quadruple the average under the former President Trump. And sure, the adults, if apprehended on the way through or afterwards, are often sent back. Not the children. They can't be sent back under US law as it stands, so more and more children are being sent to climb fences, swim rivers, cross mountains, in the hope that if they can get through, they'll act as some sort of anchor for other older family members. Now, I don't blame anyone for wanting a better life. But nation states have a right to determine who crosses their borders and in what numbers they come, because there is no right anywhere at international law for someone to just demand entry to another country wanting a better economic outcome. Poverty doesn't make you a refugee. Under the UN Convention on Refugees, there has to be a well-founded fear of persecution, such as the Jews had under Hitler, or indeed the Uyghurs have under Xi Jinping. Not just a rugged government in a poor country where life is tough and no one gets treated well. That alone doesn't make you a refugee. And it's easy for people who won't personally be disadvantaged by uncontrolled immigration, perhaps those who might get access to cheap labour or willing voters perhaps. Hence the furor from the Democrats over new voter ID laws in Georgia to say that it's cruel to stop these border crossings. But uncontrolled people movement from poorer countries to richer ones, well, that just makes life tougher for the poorer people who are already there. American workers facing lower wages, higher housing costs, worse job prospects, and more crowded cities when people can cross to whenever they like from Mexico with impunity. On a smaller scale, that's what we faced here in Australia during Labor's most recent migration crisis. 5,000 arrivals coming in just 1 month at that time before, as I said, the Abbott government stopped the boats. And that's why border protection matters. It's only countries that can control their borders that can then have an orderly and genuine refugee program that has a fair chance of popular community support. Indeed, it's worth remembering that we are one of only around 27 nations in the world that actually permanently resettles people under the UNHCR's refugee program. That means 150 so other nations in the world do not resettle refugees under that program. Let what's happening in America be a bit of a lesson. Governments can't let misplaced compassion drive their border protection policies. And voters need to be very careful about electing political parties that are conflicted on this issue. Labor will say it's tough on borders. It always does. Kevin Rudd said that before the 2007 election. But Green left governments, they can't help themselves. Whatever they pledge in opposition, in government, outcomes are welcome, Matt, and pretty soon there's another crisis on our hands. It's happened here once. It's happening in America now. Let's not be fooled on this again.